Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conservative Corner. I am your host, Shannon Carey, and today I have with me State Representative Ross Berry.
Not currently a state representative, but yes,
Well,
former
state representative.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So first, Ross, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you hail from, what town you're in?
Yep. So I live in Weare. I live in Weare with my wife. We have one child named Maverick. He's about 1.5. He actually is 1.5 actually this week. And we out there, we have 11 chickens, a rabbit, 2 cats, and a dog on about 4 acres. It's pretty much kind of what we had envisioned as near close to our dream home. We can't see the road from where we are. We're on a dirt road, very far back. We kind of like the rural lifestyle, so we've been adjusting to that. We used to live in Manchester, lived in Manchester for 12 years, quite some time. And now we're out in Weare, and we're super happy, and there was an opening, so I decided I would run for the House again. I represented Manchester for 4 years.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So as a chicken mama and a homesteader, I have to say I love your signs that I've seen out around. It's your nice little chicken graphic, and it says, "He ain't no chicken." And I'm pretty sure there has to be a story behind that. If so, what is it?
So yeah, it's a super, there's 2 things to it. So I helped on this special election like 8 years ago or something like that, and this guy had these signs. He's actually no longer with us, rest in peace, but he had these signs that said, "What's the story, vote Migliore?" And I said at the time, I was like, that is the most ridiculous thing, like putting a slogan on there. That's like, what does that even mean? I think it was the only special election we won that year. And I was like, well, I got a new district, I'm kind of like have the never back down mentality. Mm-hmm. I also have 11 chickens. So I was like, well, I'm going to throw "He's no chicken" on there, and we'll see how it goes. It's just one of those kind of cute things that I was like, oh, I can do this. And it worked for him 8 years ago. I was like, well, maybe it'll work for me. You can't run on "He's no chicken" in Manchester because they're like, what's a chicken?
There you go. But it's also very eye-catching because you see everybody has their name, but then I'm like, why has he got chickens on his sign? So then the next one comes up. What does it say? It's, "Oh, he ain't no chicken." Like, it makes you grab your attention. It does.
Yeah, every ad that I'm running right now has got there's a chicken on there somewhere because we free-ranged our chickens. So I have all these pictures, like they're in trees and doing wild things. So it's going to be a lot of, I hope people like chickens because they're going to see a lot of it over
They end up in the weirdest places.
I had 2 in a tree. It's just like hanging out in a tree. It was wild. They do wild things.
But. They do. I enjoy my chickens personally. So to the political end of things, what brought you to the realization that you should run for state rep when you did in Manchester? Mm-hmm, yeah. I see you have a really big focus on children, their health, education, childcare, so on and so forth. Was there something there that inspired you to run or something else?
Yeah, so when I first ran, I was very election law focused. So when I was in the House, I was a dual chair. I was one of only 2 dual chairs. So I was the chair of election law committee. I was the chair of the special committee on childcare. So when I first ran, I was very election law focused. And New Hampshire, despite kind of like what everybody would say, we actually had really bad election laws. So you could walk into any polling location in the state of New Hampshire, present no ID, register to vote, so you weren't even registered, and they would hand you a ballot, and it wasn't a provisional ballot. It was counted. It was counted. Ooh. And that system on face value was laughable. And the thing that kind of shocked me the most was the amount of people who didn't realize that was actually the system.
I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't realize, because when you say it, you're like, oh, there's no way. There's no way you could show up to any voting location and register to vote and they'd give you a ballot. It was and present nothing. So that was absolutely the case. So there was other kind of things that I really wanted to modernize our elections on. So things like kind of taking it out of this, especially with the database of voters and like who's voting and sort of stuff, taking it away from paper and digitizing a lot of it. We will always use paper ballots, so before somebody clips that, it's like, oh, he's against paper ballots. I'm 100% for paper ballots. But I really wanted to kind of move New Hampshire out of into the 21st century in terms of how we run our elections.
Yes.
I am a very big believer in getting a process that people can have faith in. And the thing that I always say is bad things happen in democracies when the losers believe they won.
Oh, wow.
So you need to have a system where the loser believes that that was a fair race and they lost fairly, and obviously the winner won fairly. So that was kind of the thing that got me running the first time. And we actually went through and accomplished a lot of the things that I wanted to do in the first term, and I was already in. And during that time period, my wife and I opened a childcare center, and that opened my eyes up to a whole new slew of problems with state government. And when I ran for re-election, I said, I'm going to fix this stuff. And that actually turned out to be way more of a lift than the election law stuff. And election law is very much like, the committee's like this. It's a very partisan committee. And the childcare stuff, I ran it the exact opposite. It was very bipartisan. We had, out of all the bills we handled, we only had one vote where we didn't agree the whole 2 years. So
I feel like that's kind of unheard of.
yeah, it was definitely unheard of. And there was a lot of compromises in there. We gave them one of the things that they wanted. They gave what I actually view as the biggest piece of what we wanted, and it got done. So the childcare stuff was definitely the impetus for me to run again the second term, and I think for the third term, it's going to be kind of finishing the job on childcare. There's still a whole lot left to do there, but we did do a lot.
Yeah, I think it's hard. No matter whether you're a Democrat or you're conservative, everyone has kids, and everyone wants the best for their kids. So I think it's nice to hear that the committee, the way you're saying, because it was so bipartisan, that kind of everybody walked away winners, especially the kids, which is what should matter.
Yeah, correct. And I started off the committee for childcare. I said, we're here to look at you're basically kind of looking at four things in childcare. You're looking at access, affordability, quality, and most importantly, safety, right? And unfortunately, quality and safety are usually in direct opposition to accessible and affordable. So striking that balance with people who really focused on quality and safety to the detriment of access and affordability, you have to balance that. So we did a really good job of balancing those four things.
Awesome. So one thing I'm certain members of our community are going to dig up, as I did with a simple Google search, was the end of your last term. There was a bit of drama that seemed to unfold with a vote that you called during committee that I did see some say was below the belt. I watched the clip and then I was reading about the procedure, and it seemed like it was done within the rules. Yeah. Maybe not rules people like necessarily. Yeah. But maybe you could speak to that to the viewers who have heard of that. Yeah,
so it was on election law committee, once again the committee where it's like this. And we had actually had a great working relationship. So the House was basically split. So the committee is 20 people. It was 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans. Okay. And for a committee that is inherently partisan, I was not looking forward to that, because it's like the committee already does this and now both sides are at equal strength. And we actually had a great 2 years. We accomplished a lot with campaign finance reform in particular, once again, modernizing a lot of things. But they had done something 2 weeks before that I believe that the Democrats had kind of violated our trust, which was we had a kind of an agreement, which was Republicans wouldn't fight Republicans on the floor, Democrats wouldn't fight Democrats on the floor. Republicans will fight Democrats and Democrats will fight Republicans, and that's fine, that's to be expected, but we're not going to, both me and the ranking member had agreed that we weren't going to set up, because as chair I can kind of set things up on the floor, and we had agreed that we weren't going to set that up on each other. And we had honored it for 2 years, and then 2 weeks beforehand, in my opinion, they violated that trust. They sent a Republican to go down. They coordinated with a Republican to fight and kill a Republican priority piece of legislation, and I felt that violated the sense of trust that we had built. So I showed them what that was like when you don't have trust. Okay. So to your point, it wasn't against the rules. They wrote a nice 7-page memoranda about it, and at no point was I accused of breaking the rules. And the reality is if you really want to come down to it, they did that sort of stuff of recalling votes on the floor routinely. They'd put things on the table in the morning.
I watched a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, why are you pulling that back up? Why are you?
Correct. So effectively, I did the same thing that they had done on the floor multiple times.
Just within a committee.
Just within the committee, and they had never seen that before. And I gave the ranking member the dignity of explaining to her exactly why I did it. I told her I consider the matter settled. Like, there's no more. Her and I have actually spoken several times since then. Her name's Connie Lane. I have a lot of respect for her. She represents Concord. We are totally separated on ideology, but we were able to get along. And I explained to her, I felt that what you guys did 2 weeks before was below the belt. So I showed you what it can be, what it could have been like. And if I'm lucky enough to go back to Concord, my hope is that that sort of stuff never has to happen again, because now they understand, when Berry says something, he will follow through with it. Yeah. He's no chicken.
You're a man of your word.
Yeah.
Is another way to look at it. So with that drama out of the way, thank you for clearing that up. Because I wondered too, I'm like, it looked fine. I didn't quite understand.
It was way overblown because there was nothing else going on.
The article was in the Boston Globe, and I was like, what does
Well,
Boston give a crap about?
They'll
what
do
we're
anything they
doing?
can to write a negative story about a Republican. But it was exacerbated by, I did it, a week later they wrote this memo, and then I told the speaker I was resigning because I was moving. I was in the process of moving to
couldn't
Weare.
be on that. You couldn't represent anymore.
Couldn't represent anymore. So I started getting he took me off my committee because I was moving. And it was like, it's just like this whole conflab of like
It got so
stuff, yeah, just
blown out of
overblown. It was like, it was very satisfying for him. Like, he got removed for what he did. It was like, I'm moving. I'm moving.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I saw your tweet. You were like, actually, I'm moving. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to sleep. I wasn't kidding. I was like, I wanted to sleep in my house. I'd owned the house for a month, and I hadn't been able to sleep in it consecutively because I have to represent Manchester. Got to live in Manchester. And the wife was kind of like, all right,
I'm done.
We're done. She's like, I'm done. I want to live in my new house. I was like, all right, Joe, we'll get out of here.
Can't say I blame her. I moved from Manchester, so I get that. But so we have 6 representatives for Goffstown. There's 4 Goffstown only, and then there's 2 Goffstown and Weare spots, which yourself and Lisa Mazer are running for. Could you maybe explain what a floater is and why exactly Goffstown and Weare are combined when it comes to those representatives?
Yeah, so I was on a redistricting committee my first term, so I could probably talk about this for an hour and a half. I won't do that. But long story short is there's this, in the Constitution you have to have what's called one man, one vote. And the way the courts rule that is basically they look at the voting power of an individual in a town. So in New Hampshire, we can't break towns apart, right? So Goffstown actually should have like 5.5. Right, just based on population. Weare should have like 2.5 based on population. So what happens is Weare and Goffstown touch. They both need an extra rep, but they both are not big enough to get to the extra rep. So what happens is you put the towns together. They have to be contiguous. They have to touch, and that creates a floterial seat, which then kind of balances out the voting power of both sides. So you're always trying to make sure when you're districting that the towns have their kind of their base seats, right? So Goffstown's 4, but Goffstown really should have 5.5. So if you want to look at it, the floterial seat kind of robs Goffstown of like 3/4 of a seat that they're owed, but you have to do this thing called necessary violations to make the distribution work. It's a very complicated thing, and there's a software for it. And I helped on Hillsborough County pretty extensively. But yeah, it makes sense to put the two together. And it makes like the math works and the politics works, right? Like they're connected and they're effectively like when I'm going to Manchester, I drive through Goffstown. So.
Okay.
And my barber's here now, so I live in Weare and I get my hair cut in Goffstown.
So when elected, you would represent members of Goffstown and the Weare community.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So you would be a voice for both.
A voice for both. Yep. So it's the same vote in Concord, but like 3 times the work to get elected.
3 times the work. No thanks. So one topic I think I've discussed with every guest that's come on the show, mainly because it affects my family directly, is New Hampshire and school choice when it comes to EFAs and charter schools. And I'm constantly hearing or seeing on Facebook, I should say, that school choice, particularly the EFA program, steals from public school system. And that it's actually costing the state money.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm hearing.
That's an interesting theory.
Most recently, that's what I'm hearing. Yeah. It's costing the state money. Yeah. So maybe you could share about, I know you weren't on that committee, but maybe you could share about why that's true or not, and why having school choice matters in New Hampshire.
Yes, I was a big driver of this actually. When we were doing the EFAs came out in the budget from the 2021 budget, and school choice is it's very close to my heart too, right? So I don't have a kid he's not school age yet, but I'll kind of give you an example for me personally. So I grew up in Houston, Texas, and Houston, Texas did not have any school choice program. I went to Houston ISD, is not a school district to be envied. There's a lot of things not great about it, right? And so when I was in middle school, they put me in the gifted and talented program, but they weren't really doing what they needed to do. So my parents made the decision to pull me out and take me to private school. So I am the byproduct of both public and private schooling.
Okay.
And they did that, and a year later, my dad, who was the only income earner for the house, lost his job. He'd worked in the telecom industry his entire life, and after WorldCom, the whole thing collapsed. And my dad was he didn't work for 2 years, which was really tough on our family. And thankfully, he had been successful in the industry before, but things started to get tight. And home life was not great, because my parents were trying to figure out, the public school system had failed me. So my parents were trying to figure out, do we pay the mortgage or do we send Ross to give him the education that he needs to succeed? And I wrote an op-ed in the Union Leader about this, and I said, at the time, it's like, God forbid if you left a light on in the home when you're not there, you would hear about it. And that experience of coming from the public school system to the private school system without aid has really stuck with me, because we were not a family of means. We were a poor family. I was on CHIPS, Children's Health Insurance Program. So things were not great. And I think one of my biggest complaints is the left in particular doesn't believe in a mixed delivery education system.
Right.
So there's this notion that Republicans don't like public school. I love public school.
It works for so many kids.
It actually works for the majority of them.
It does.
And I have no problem with public schools. I want them to be well funded. I want them to be successful. It is impossible for them to work for everyone. Right? Some kids are going to do better in a charter school environment. Some kids are going to do better at home. Some kids are going to do better in a combination of the two. And I think this kind of arrogance to believe that the public school system can and should handle all of these children is fundamentally wrong. And we know what's actually behind it, right? It's the teachers. It's the teacher leadership. The leadership of the teachers union is the one driving this sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
If I say all the time, if these charter schools were unionized, the Democrats would be the biggest fan of
100%.
charter schools and EFAs.
100%.
The notion that the EFAs have cost the school's money is absolutely ludicrous. So the Department of Education put out a study. EFAs have saved the New Hampshire taxpayer $156 million across the whole state.
Oh wow!
So
I didn't know it was that high.
Yeah, because what's happening is there's two portions to public school funding. There's the local portion, which is mostly your property taxes, and that's, depending on the district, that's 2/3 to 3/4 of the funding, and the rest of it is mostly picked up by the state. Occasionally there's some grants that get stuff put in there, but mostly it's those two funding sources. So what the left never talks about is when you remove the child from the public school, the only thing that changes is the state funding.
Right.
And that follows the student. And what really drives me nuts about is that funding has always been tied to enrollment. It has always been that way. So when a child, here we're in Goffstown High School, right? So when a child graduated Goffstown High School and went to college or wherever, no one accused that family of defunding the public school. But the financial impact was exactly the same, except it actually wasn't. It was actually better for the schools under EFAs, because if a child left a school, or still does, if a child leaves a school in Goffstown, there's a 3-year phase down period if they use an EFA program. So the thing that I always do is rich kid, poor kid, right? Because I was the poor kid. In private school, I was the poor kid. So if you have a rich family and they pull their kid out of public school and put them into a private school, no one accuses that family of defunding the public school.
Nope.
No one accuses them of doing that. When a poor family has the audacity to pull their kid out of a public school and put them into a private school, homeschool, or charter school, whatever it be, then all of a sudden the poor family is defunding the public school. And that part of it is actually really offensive to me.
Yeah.
It is a direct it's classism.
Yeah.
And it's okay when rich people do it, but when poor people do it, all of a sudden they're destroying their public school system. So the whole thing has been completely
blown out of proportions.
The money's always been tied to enrollment, and the reality is like a big theme of my campaign is going to be power to the parents, right? I think parents should have control over their kids' education system. Apparently, that's a radical idea now.
Not to this mom.
Yeah.
Not to this mom. Thank you.
So it's I'm big into that. There's some things happening inside of these public schools, not necessarily Goffstown or Weare, really, to be honest. Some of the, like Manchester, had a lot of problems, but this notion that Democrats, they want to keep, if something happens in a public school, they want to kind of put it in a secret black box, and they don't want to tell mom and dad about it. And they have fought and conquered religiously to stop parents from finding out about what's happening with their kids in public school. And I'll end my education kind of diatribe on this one. All Republicans are doing here is responding to what the voters have told us. Got to kind of put your history hat on here for a second. When COVID-19 happened, it brought public school into the home for the first time ever.
A lot of parents up.
That's exactly right. It woke a lot of parents went, "You're doing what now? You're learning what?" And that's what drove this. I tell people all the time, Democrats did more by sending school to the home with remote learning to forward school choice and mixed delivery than anything a conservative Republican could have ever done.
I
They
agree.
probably moved that ball forward 3 generations. I'm not even being facetious. And it's because parents saw what was happening, they didn't like it, and then when they went to their school board, remember everybody used to go to the school board meeting and blow the school board meetings up? Then all of a sudden the school boards are like, well, we don't tell you what happens. And then they were like, you don't do what? So now that's why you're seeing this kind of mass exodus. People are leaving the public school system in New Hampshire. And it's not a Goffstown problem, it's not a Weare problem, it's a statewide problem.
Say, it's
the
the whole
numbers
state.
are down.
It's the country,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's happening in a lot of states.
Correct. So I'm a big believer in this. Parents should be in control. When it comes to education for me, it's parents and students first.
Well, thank you for that, because I have a daughter here right at GHS, and I have a son in a charter school, and I'm so thankful for the choice.
And it's great.
So thankful. Okay, so next topic then.
Yeah, you didn't expect that one from me about
No, that was a
education,
really good
did you?
answer, though. I really I agree with you 100%. So, when elected to Concord, what would you most like to see accomplished? Like, what's your the one thing that you're like, when I get back up there, this has to happen?
Yeah, so I've got some things in election law I need to kind of button up. We just introduced voter ID. So I told you about the program of show up and no ID and do whatever. We actually ended that. So hopefully the governor will sign that bill into law. It's House Bill 1569. That law is not perfectly written. Bluntly, it wasn't. I was surprised that it passed, just because it was a change of 30 years of election laws and a lot of lies that have been told. And so we'll have to do some tweaking around that to kind of get that up and running the way it should be and the way it's done right. Because no one's trying to stop anybody from voting. That's a whole.
We need people to vote.
We want people to vote. I want people to vote. I just want to know who you are and where you live, and also that you're a United States citizen. But those are the 3 things that we want to know. So we'll have to do some tweaking there. On childcare, there's some more work to do on that. Childcare centers have 100 pages of regulations. I have a friend of mine who makes medical plastics. He's a plastics engineer, and he makes medical plastics. He has less regulations than a childcare center does, and he makes things that go into like heart valves and stuff like that.
Stuff goes into people's bodies.
Correct. So he was stunned when he found out that we have more regulations than him. So the DHHS is doing kind of an overhaul of these licensing rules. But what I want to do is, after they're done, is right now DHHS can basically unilaterally make rules, and those rules have the full force of law. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to bring that, before DHHS can pass new rules onto a child care center, I want to make it to where we have this thing called the Child Care Advisory Board Council. It's appointed by the state. It's a legislatively enacted board. I want to make it to where when they enact new rules after they get done with their big block change, that they have to go through this board. And this board is composed of people who work in the industry, both the for-profit, the nonprofit side. So that makes sure that before they just pass a rule, they're getting consent from the people that are actually on the ground. During COVID-19, which devastated the childcare industry, absolutely devastated the childcare industry, they brought forward 37 new pages of regulations. And it was like tone deaf, right? Like the childcare centers were screaming, we're closing down, we can't keep our doors open. And DHHS was like, here's 37 pages of new rules, have fun. So we need to fix that process. I will say DHHS has come a long way. I was very critical of them 2 years ago, and in the last year, they've had some changes in leadership and things have gotten better. But that doesn't mean that because things have gotten better in the last year that I've forgotten about the last 3.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have them get their stuff done, and they're doing a great job of it. But after they're done with it, we're gonna lock them in and be like, no, in the future when you do this, you're gonna. And they, to their credit, the rules they're coming out with now, they are going through the Child Care Advisory Council. I'm just gonna make it mandatory.
There you go. Hey, I don't think parents would argue with that.
No.
Especially because I see on social media pages, people just, non-school age kids, just trying to find a place to put their kid right now.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's impossible.
Yeah. There's a child care center owner here, I won't say who it is, in Goffstown. And she basically told me she was terrified of DHHS before, because they can come in, they can just shut you down. There's no nothing. They can just shut you down. So the other thing that we've done, actually, I should say, is I put in a bill and they put it into rules, which is it used to be DHHS was judge, jury, and executioner for violations. Now there's an appeals process with an independent third body, which is much better. But I would like to get that more kind of sewn up. There's a lot of things around the peripherals that I want to get sewn up. A thing I want to do in Concord, I'd love to get these EFAs expanded out again. I believe the money should follow the child. So that's another thing. But I won't be the guy on the tip of the spear for that one because it's not my, I'm the election law and child care guy, and they're going to kind of keep me in that box. So.
But it's nice to know where you would vote on that when
Oh,
it comes to the
absolutely.
House, for sure. So before we sign off, can you fill people in on where they can find you on the World Wide Web, how they can get in touch with you or anything?
Yeah, so my website, I'm one of the few state reps of the website, or former state reps of the website, candidates of the website, Berry for NH, so Berry, not B-A, Berry, fornh.com. You could call, text me, 603-803-3448. It goes right to me.
Awesome.
Emails right on the website. It all, we don't get staff. We get $100 a year, no staff. It all goes right to me, and I feel, one of the things that I was very proud of is when I represented Manchester, I had the largest district of any Republican in the state. So I represented more people in the state house as a Republican than any other state rep.
Okay.
I responded to every constituent email, every phone call, every text message, every letter that came in.
Even the ones you didn't really want to?
Even the ones that told me
awesome.
to put it where the sun don't shine. I always respond to everything, and that's my commitment I made for the last 4 years. It's a commitment I'll make for the next 2 years. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal, a far-righter, a socialist, just confused. I will give you how I will vote, why I voted the way I did. I don't hide it. I'm straightforward about it.
I think that's awesome. We need representatives who are willing to answer to the people who put them there. So I appreciate that. That's some integrity.
And thanks for having me on here.
Yes. So with that, I believe that's all the time we have. Thank you very much, Ross, for coming on, and we will see you next time.